Thank you, Mr. President. February 23rd, 1807 is a momentous date in history, and I think it's something that's worth remembering here today. It was the date of I think what you would call it is a legislative miracle. It was when the British House of Commons, after 20 years of trying, abolished the transatlantic slave trade. And I've spoken to this issue every year on or about the anniversary of that momentous date, 208 years ago today. And the parliamentarian that was willing to bring that forward year after year for 20 years, William Wilberforce, he did a lot of things that innovated in the area of political activism, because most of the elites of the day were against abolition of the slave trade. He actually invented the concept of the petition drive. That was part of the effort made by abolitionist campaigners. So you may ask yourself, why did it take 20 years to end the slave trade in England? Why did it take them 20 years to abolish it? And the answer is that there was very well-financed opposition. That opposition was known as either the pro-slavery or West India lobby. And it primarily came from owners of sugar plantations, sugar production that came to be controlled by a small circle of wealthy planters and merchants. And they basically made the argument that abolishing the slave trade would be bad for economic reasons. And they were very successful in delaying for 20 years the passage of the abolition of the slave trade. In fact, in the late 1790s, when Wilberforce seemed on the verge of success, of finally abolishing this evil practice, the pro-slavery or West India lobby came to the Parliament and said, we have a compromise. We have a way of working this out where we can deal with this issue without unduly harming business in the United Kingdom. And the way they suggested to do it was to gradually abolish slavery. There was no date set. There was no real teeth in it, but it was something that the Parliament was able to pass and act as though they were doing something on that very important issue. Because, as Wilberforce learned, there's no lobby for individual freedom. There are no economic interests, generally, specific economic interests, that are advanced when protecting individual freedom. And that's why our founders, when they wrote the Constitution, insisted on the 10 amendments, the guarantees to individual liberty, our Bill of Rights. And those guarantees have to be relitigated generation after generation. And the question that we should always be asking ourselves is the question that William Wilberforce asked. Not about what things look like on a balance sheet or a ledger, but what kind of life are you going to be able to live? What kind of society are you going to be able to build? And he insisted on one that would be free thinking, free people. Even after 1807, it took another 20 years to end slavery. But February 23rd, 1807 was the death rattle with the passage of the abolition of the transatlantic slave trade. And I think that's something we should remember not just today, but every day. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.